Hi, welcome everybody to another episode of A Rehab Diary, the series. And today's episode is going to be an incredibly amazing educational episode because we have the beautiful Dr. Suzanne with us today. Suzanne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Alice. It's very kind of you.
I'm so excited to have you here soon because I honestly, what you guys are working on within your business and then you as a professional as well, I think diving into some of the research that you have done and the education that we can take away from that when it comes to our development as humans, starting from that child point of view. I think just the work that you've done and are continuing to do in that space is incredible. So I can't wait to get into it today with you. So thank you so much for being here and speaking with us.
Our pleasure. So hopefully it will be of interest to some people.
Exactly. So we start every podcast off with the same question, and that is, what is mental resilience to you?
Mental resilience to me, and I was thinking about this, and I liken it almost to, it's almost like when you're drowning in the bottom of a well. You know that you're going down, and I think it's having that awareness that you are starting to flounder down there at the bottom of that well, and then but it's also then having that capacity or that interest even in wanting to come back up out of that well. And if you don't have that, then you're just going to tread water for a long time. But if you have that interest in survival or thriving, and then you combine that with the capability, so you've got the right tools to help you climb up the ladder that's in the well with you, but you just haven't seen, then you can actually start to come back up. And then I think the more frequently we go down to the bottom of the well, or skilled we become in recognizing what the ladder looks like, because sometimes it might be a rope ladder, sometimes it might be a steel ladder, sometimes it might just be walls in the side of the well as we're starting to come back up. And the earlier we can recognize that we are going down, and the more able we are to identify and hold on to that ladder, whichever it may be, the more resilient we become, so that we tend not to go down as far each time, so that we get to the end of our days, hopefully, where we've only just have to dip our toe in the water.
I love that analogy because, number one, I've asked a number of people that question and I've never had a response like that. But number two, it not only, I think, symbolizes the fact that there is the recognition that comes with maybe that descend or that ascend, but also the fact that, like you said, the ladder, it might be a rope ladder, it might be a steel ladder, it might be, that symbolizes to me that it is different for everybody, and that everybody's recognition of either ascending or descending on that ladder is different, because everybody is different and the way in which we are shaped is so different. And I love that analogy because it symbolizes the difference as well.
Yes, so that's how I think of it as you have to have the ability to recognise that you are on the downward slope, the interest and the engagement and the willingness to come back up, and then the tools to actually get up. And I guess that interest and belief in knowing that you can come back up is also rooted in our childhood as well, and our sense of self and our sense of efficacy. And if we grew up always, treading water, because we didn't have the tools to come up out of the water any further, then we may very well stay there for a long, long time, much longer than we needed to.
So, yeah, that is so interesting. I've never actually thought of it like that. I really like your take on that. So tell us a little bit about you and what got you into sort of childhood development and behaviour and your research as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So my background is in disability and special education, only for the last 20 years or so, I guess. I had a whole other life prior to that. And then I always wanted to be a teacher when I was a little girl, and was accepted into university when I left high school. But because of my own attachment needs, I decided that I wasn't ready to leave my mummy and my daddy. So I stayed in Mackay, and it wasn't until much, much later that I finally achieved that dream, which was great. And then I rose through the ranks from being a special needs teacher to a head of special education, a deputy principal. I was principal at one stage, deputy principal at the special school, and then moved over into mainstream. So I've had the fortunate, was been in the fortunate position of being in leadership roles and delivering professional development to teachers, or certainly organising it, or whatever it might be. And I started to wonder why it was that with the same professional development that everybody does on their pupil-free days, and the same students and the same rules at school and the same expectations, why is it that a child would respond so differently to each teacher? And it really puzzled me as to what that was all about, because you would think that if we're all implementing the same supporting program or behaviour management program, then everybody should be doing fine. And it didn't work out like that. And so that led me into further study. I chopped and changed in the beginning as to what my thesis would, or the research question would be, and I finally settled on it, which was great. And then when I started into the research, with this epiphany one day, and I'm sure lots of people have had this epiphany, and it really my thinking around. And my thought was that we're always talking about challenging student behaviour, challenging this. The students, basically all the onus of responsibility was being put on the student for their behaviour. And I don't know what made me think of it, but I thought, but it's not the challenging behaviour of students, it's the teachers who are challenged by the students' behaviour. And I started to sort of play with that and think about that. And it is, because behaviour is simply a form of communication. It's just another way to get our message across to people. And generally our behaviour is wanting to either avoid something or wanting to gain something. It's either generally divided into four. And then I started to think more about teachers being challenged by student behaviour. And why is that? Why is it that the teacher in 5A, for example, would take the time to talk to this particular child or show an interest in whatever he was doing outside of school, compared to the teacher in 5B, who really was just a 9 to 3 person, didn't care, and her kids were always at the office. And then that got me thinking, well, there must be something more to it, because if we got the same exposure to practices and the same children and the same opportunities, what is it? What is it about that? And then I started looking more forward and looking into theoretical approach. Just really resonated with me, because it talks about personal relationships and how our childhood and our attachment style is reflected in our interpersonal relationships. And then that got me thinking, Alice, that really teaching is a relationship between the student and the teacher. It's like the mother and the child, the teacher and the student. And so I started thinking more about that. And then I got to thinking that it's really not fair that we put the onus of responsibility of behaviour change fully onto the child or the student. They're the ones too who are least equipped to know how to just change their behaviour, and that it's the adults in that child's lives who have the capacity to make those changes that are needed for that relationship to thrive. And if you have a strong relationship with a child or a student, they will eat out of your hand. And that's what it comes down to. I realise what it really is. The quality of the relationship determines how influence you have with the child in your care. So, long story short, I wanted to find out more about what it was certain teachers, why they responded to their students like that, in comparison to it was really interesting. I did for all studies, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. Well, apart from rewriting everything all the time, but it was great, and had my own ADHD been diagnosed at that point, I'm sure I would have finished half the time. But I love going down all the different little rabbit holes and coming with all these different things. So that's where I came from there. And then in amongst all of that, I decided that I would like to start sharing more of my findings to the wider community, and looked into becoming a behaviour practitioner with clients through the NDIS, which I was very fortunate to do probably a couple of years ago now. Started our business, and we now have 25 employees, which is ridiculous. So it certainly wasn't in my initial planning, but I'm learning a lot more now how to be a CEO and behaviour in organisations and things, and it's great.
I think, the way in which you've been able to think through the different avenues and see that when you look at relationships with a child and a teacher, it is such a critical relationship, because like you said, having a poor relationship can cause such a massive problem for their life moving forward. It can be areas that the child isn't even introduced to maximize their potential. It's just like if you think about, let's say, a couple, there are some people that just suit each other and some people that don't, but relationships are so dynamic, and it's actually figuring out or allowing teachers to have those tools and strategies to kind of go, we have more of that knowledge. And what you said to me, which I still remember, is behavior is a story. So it's giving that knowledge to the teacher to go, right, this kid is trying to talk to you in a different way. How can you understand that, rather than butting heads with something completely different? And I think having that approach is incredible, because that's where you're going to maximize what the child is actually capable of doing and developing into. And that's incredible.
That's exactly how it works. So, and it's the quality of those childhood relationships then with their classroom teachers that will either confirm or challenge their own responses when they become teachers, their expectations. So if you had a good time at school, a good relationship with most of your teachers at school, and you become a teacher yourself, then you're going to be fairly happy and, have reasonable expectations or different expectations. as opposed to those, unfortunately, who had quite a torrid time at school, who very bravely then enter the teaching profession. Their responses are going to be different. And there's actually a study was done, and I remember coming across this in my research, that 80% of teachers enter the teaching profession to meet an unmet emotional need of their own. Some teachers take children's behaviour toward them when it doesn't meet their standard or their expectation. They take it very personally. And I wonder if that's because they've come in with a particular expectation or need, that subconscious need, that they need to be filled. And when the child isn't responding to their overtures or their expectations in the way that they need them to do, that they become more upset and more reactive than teachers who haven't come in with that internal subconscious need to be met. Does that make sense? So when the behaviour challenges the teacher's expectations, I think that sense of resilience and sense of self in the teacher is a very strong factor in their response to the child's behaviour.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, because it's not necessarily like you said before, it's usually subconscious. And I think the intention behind it is usually there's usually a lot of good intention behind it. So there's that going into that space. Yeah, it's like going into that space of wanting to make a difference and wanting to help in a way that maybe they didn't have, or they felt that their needs weren't met. So they want to be that solution. But when because of that reason as well, like you said, there's that emotional attachment that can almost be a bit triggering, because they also understand what it's like, however many years later, and that can be a difficult relationship to navigate.
Exactly.
How do you feel our experiences growing up influence us as we develop? And is it something that you think changes, or is it a critical point in our life that shapes us?
Definitely. So I think it can be changed depending on how aligned we are with it. So attachment theory is based on the premise that the beliefs and expectations of a child with its parent and the types of experiences it has determine how safe and secure the child feels. So the more consistent and the more predictable the actions and the interactions that the parent has with the child when they're a baby, positive interactions, the more secure the child will feel. So it's always continually intertwining. And then by the time kids reach about the age of 3, it's thought that they develop internal working model, and it's how the children anticipate what's going to happen, because if they've had that consistency and predictability, they anticipate that if they get into a particular situation, that the adult's response is going to be this, generally positive. If, however, you've had a child who's been in a relationship with an adult who has been quite distant at times, and the child has been left for long periods of time, when they're going to have a bit more of perhaps an anxious type relationship, because they don't quite know if you're going to come back this time or not. or if you're going to feed me or not. And so that can be a more anxious type of attachment. So that when they do get to kindy or prep and mum leaves them, it's, are you going to come back? You know, those sorts of things. This isn't all set in stone. This is just theory. And then we have another type where the child is in a relationship with the parent. The parent is the caregiver, but they're also the punishment giver. So the child knows that they're reliant on the parent to keep them safe, keep them fed. But then the parent meets out the punishment or things like that, it's like the caregiver who they would go to security is also a person who is making them feel unsafe. So if it's a neglectful environment or a physically abusive environment or things like that, so the child becomes quite conflicted. They're, on one hand, they're seeking the comfort from the parent, but at the same time, it's that parent that they're trying to run away from or get away from. So, and that's probably a number of our clients that we have at the moment experiencing very difficult, complex behavioural concerns because they haven't had that safety and security from a significant caregiver throughout their life. So but again, everyone is different. Nothing is gospel. Please don't take anything I say as 100%. It's all theory. So, and it's from that we learn that's our baseline, I guess. So if we come from a secure upbringing, we may expect that, we will treat people with kindness and patience. If we come from more anxious attachment, we might be continually wanting to people please because we want to come back, want to like us, because otherwise we won't have that.
So do you think that these, when we sort of, again in theory, but develop these attachment styles through the different, through our upbringing, are they then something that grows with us as we go through experiences, I guess, into adulthood? And how much does that play on our choices and behaviours as adults?
Quite a bit, certainly, and it's yeah. So what I came up with in my thesis as well, a bit of a spectacular type pattern, I suppose. Cyclical, get the word right. So basically, we start off with those relationships, and we have attachment, which is the pattern, which leads to the development of our beliefs and expectations. And then the challenge is that level of alignment between our beliefs and expectations, someone else's, and whether it be us as a child and the teacher or us as parents, our expectations and beliefs, what our children are doing or what our partner is doing. So that's the challenge, is working out that level of alignment between different person's beliefs and expectations. And then from that, we get a stimulus. So something happens, and what do we do here? So we're in a classroom. The student is behaving in a way that is not in alignment with our beliefs and expectations from our experiences when we were a child. So then that leaves us in an emotional space, and I'll come back to it in a second, and that's our choice. So then, if we're working with the classroom analogy, the response is the teacher. So we go from stimulus to response. If there's ever a stimulus, there's always a response. And that's where the teacher makes the decision or the choice as to what they're going to do. The effect on that is the perceived capability the teacher then has. So if she responds from her beliefs and expectations, and she's come from that secure base, then she's likely to have quite a strong sense of self-efficacy, and she'll be confident and she will follow through and those sorts of things and be fair in her meeting her. If we have perhaps a teacher who is anxious out of her experience today, then her self-efficacy is going to be much lower. And then that leads then to the quality of the relationship. So the challenge is that level of alignment, the solution, and then if it's a strong relationship and then the beliefs and expectations and the student behaviour can be responded to more positively and effectively. This growing cycle with both growing this upward spiral as opposed to a downward spiral, and very, very easy to get caught up at negative spiral and that nothing's going to change, that we've tried everything, and then the child will go to a new teacher the following year. Actually, just jumping back to that emotional base, another pivotal one in my thinking when I was doing my study was I read Viktor Frankl's, and he writes that between stimulus and response there's a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. And in that response lies our growth and freedom. And that really, really resonated with me. And in that space, I believe, is the culmination of our expectations and our lived experiences, and it's our interpretation that gives us power to choose whether we're going to respond or if we're going to react.
It's that commonality ground. It's that I'm not, it's not more my way than your way. It's a space where we're both equal to kind of understand. And I loved that because I love ways of thinking about things that are also practical. So not necessarily practical in a sense of, yes, we can do something about it. It's something that almost brings physicality to a situation. I love how it brought an environment, a space that I could show up to. And in my brain, I go, right, let's stop here. Only because I've hit this space and this thing, this space, I've hit that. So here I understand the situation. And I found that resonated so much. And it's so true because you cannot physically have two people the same. And I interpret the space would be different to the way that you interpret the space, but the commonality is that it's a common ground, it's a space. So you can't, I love that idea of having that because it gives a point to stop. Because sometimes with our brain, it doesn't stop. That's the problem, is that it continues going based on our previous conscious and subconscious experiences and expectations and ideas and thoughts, and not even that, but our emotional well-being on the day. And that was one thing. As soon as you started speaking, I'm like, yes, I know what she's going to say here because it resonates so much.
Yeah, it's definitely the power of the pause. A lot of people have a gap between stimulus and response. Some people, it's like, and all we want to do is tiny little bit, because if you can break that pattern of thought, that tunnel vision, that people who are needing something and their behaviour is becoming more and more elevated. But two, it's also getting to recognise what their triggers are, what their baseline level is, Alice, because for some of us, we're down here at this level. There's some children who have come from experiences and they have organised events, so they're quite confused and on high alert and high vigilant to start with because they know if they're psychologically safe or not. So once we're here, they may be starting with the peak being here. So something that doesn't upset us, for some children, particularly those who have sensory difficulties, it's only going to take a little to tip them into the next level. And of course, what's wrong with you? Just ignore it. But we're not understanding that they're here. So we need to not join them up here. And in the end, we're all up here at the top level, shouting and screaming with nothing being fixed or acknowledged or changed. So what we need to do is, even if our child or student raises up here, we need to stay here all the time. They can't self-regulate until they learn to co-regulate. Can't co-regulate till we stay with them at our level.
Is there a place in which you can actually form practical tools? Because it's very, to me, it's completely useless to say, oh, don't react, respond. Okay. When I'm in that state of wanting to react, I am not thinking don't react, otherwise I wouldn't. So it's almost a skill in itself that has to be learned to then go, right, what are the tools in my toolkit? And so I think what that space does is it gives us a point to actually work on that space, work on what is that space, work on just getting to that space. Don't worry about the after the space until we get to the space.
And that's exactly how our programs work, is we work based on building those relationships and getting that alignment in there. So if mum and dad come into this, and we encourage all of our clients to do a within circle of security course, which is brilliant for helping adults understand their own triggers and understand the concepts of safety and security. And we find that really helpful because we want parents to also take some responsibility and accountability for the relationship breakdown with their child. And then once we do that, we also work with the child to teach them how to, what to do when mum or dad says this is what you want to do. So we really advocate for less talk. Sometimes parents talk too much. Particularly if a child is on the way to being quite elevated in their behaviour, once that happens, then limbic brain kicks in, the prefrontal closes down, so they're not listening to you. So it's pointless talking about all of the things that they should be doing. They're tapped out. They're not there. The time for talking is after, way after. Once you get to that space, have an idea before of it's going to trigger you into that reaction rather than a response. So you're aware of yourself, so it's getting to know yourself and how you are going to respond to them and which of the behaviours you're going to let slide and which of the behaviours are so serious that you really need to do something about it, and can consistently provide that response. So if you offer hollow threats, if you do that again, I'm going to take the iPad off you. Child does it again, and you don't remove the iPad. Oh, it's not doing anything. But what we prefer to do is we catch them doing something positive. So they take the phone, great, you have an extra 10 minutes on the iPad, rather than you haven't been doing, you're losing the iPad for the day. You know what I mean? It's tweaking how we look at things so that the children come with us for the journey, not get dragged along or frightened into doing things, or that fear-based or loss-based.
A lot of good traits would come from that as we develop the partnership there. And it's working on those behavioural patterns in that is a sense of resilience that's being built amongst the partnership. That space, whether it's me with my sister or a potential partner or me with a friend, all of those concepts are important with regards to human relationship building in general. So starting that from a very young age will only instill those beautiful behaviors into future relationships growing up.
Yeah, definitely. And you're spot on. It's the effort that needs to be acknowledged, because everybody craves acknowledgement.
Again, I go back to what you said that's ever since we spoke, is that behavior is a story. There's something there this is I guess a response or reaction to a story. And behavior shouldn't be necessarily good and bad. It's just a meaning. And it comes from a response. You look at the amount of people that go into, let's say, relationships or whatnot, it's just different behavior.
Yeah. I think certainly we need to listen rather than tell.
The importance of self-awareness. What is your take on that? How important do you think self-awareness is to us from, growing as adults?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's essential, but again, we will always have that blind spot of our own, of things that others can see that about us that we can't see ourselves. And it's all very good and well to be self-aware, but what you do with that awareness determines, like we were talking about earlier, whether you get out of the well or not. And sometimes it takes a longer time to admit that you probably need to get out of the well, because even though it's very comfy and you're used to it down there, but these other people just keep wanting to drag you out. So I do think self-awareness is very important, particularly in times of crisis, so that you do have something to fall back on.
So do you have any tips that you would like to give our listeners that might, let's say somebody they haven't really dove into the self-awareness journey too much, maybe wanting to start to become a little bit more cognitively aware of some of their behaviors or patterns and understand more about themselves? What are some tools or tips that you could give some of our guys?
So I guess, I think get to know yourself, and then act on it. I'm very good at saying what to do, but I'm only, starting to actually put into practice myself a lot more. That makes sense. So just in a couple of aspects of my life, so always improving and always being aware. I am talking about the gym here. I am well aware one needs to exercise. Have I? No, I'm happy down the bottom. So then I had a little bit of a fright and decided that the self-awareness that I've just received does need action. So I found my ladder, and starting to come back up 5 minutes on the treadmill at a time, building my more resilience that way as well.
That's so good, but it's so true. I think a big thing that I found with me is that approaching self-awareness as if you're not trying to find something, it's trying to be a sponge. If you don't have the ability to just want to learn or just understand, it's not a matter of, I want to find out what person I am. It's kind of more so being open, having that view in your brain and in your mindset to kind of go, that makes sense as to why I resonate with that. It's this experience has made me realize this about myself. So it's a journey and it's a process that is so individual, but I don't think when it comes to, and there's tools that we can use, but I don't think it's a matter of, oh, I want to, set off and find something. Yeah.
I think sometimes too it's more getting out of our own way as well. Yes, to let the real us come through. We have to, let go of who we think we are and actually, just enjoy being who we are. And the same with our lilies as well. Enjoy them for who they are. They've only been on for dozens on the world for dozens of weeks, so they're not that old really.
So I do just want to touch on a little bit about, I guess, our subconscious and how our subconscious holds on to experiences, how it's shaped, how our lack of conscious awareness of that would sometimes make it confusing for us to understand maybe experiences that we grew up with, how we might not remember that right now, but our body does and our subconscious does. And how do you feel that how much does that actually come into play with our decision making and our growth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it certainly does. And I think we touched briefly on that earlier, talking about the internal working memory. But yeah, I think there is a lot in that. You would know the book, Body Keeps the Score. That's quite a fascinating read. And yes, so I think it does. I think all of our experience go into a big melting pot. And yeah, and come out more so probably under periods of stress when we're at a pump, when we are feeling anxious, we tend to revert back to the pattern in our childhood. Often, if we go back to the family home after X amount of years, sometimes we'll revert back to acting how we did as a child. Then we can again develop that awareness, really work hard at becoming who we like and who we want to be.
And that's where that self-awareness, I guess, allows us to understand about those little hidden things in our subconscious that we, it takes a certain situation to bring that out in us. And if we can understand that and we can find the right tools, that's where I guess it's a constant learning navigation to allow us to find the right things that works best for us. So just finally, you guys are doing incredibly well with your business. Like, so 25 staff, my God. I think what you guys are doing there with regards to creating that, you're creating that space. You're creating that space from a child point of view, from a parent point of view, and then taking that into different avenues into school and whatnot. Tell us what's next for you guys professionally with your business and what you'd love to achieve professionally and personally.
Yeah, thank you. So it is just flying ahead. So my main goal now is to consolidate and really strengthen our relationship with our clients and our new clients, our existing clients. It's really important to me that our clients feel acknowledged and heard, and that they get a sense of out of life. So a number of our clients, particularly clients who come to us with behavioural concerns, we love finding out what it is that makes them tick, like what it is that they really enjoy doing, and trying to work that in something of interest for them. So call them our Learning at Life programs, and we run volunteer playgroups. And then when they come back to see me the following week, they have like a reflection sheet of what activities they're doing and what they thought they would do, and building that resilience. Certainly want to do more of that. Have a few professional developments coming up that we're having some signature programs in our early childhood space in the social curriculum, which is brilliant. I've started writing a book based on my thesis, so keen to get that out there and working with it and incorporating my findings and our strategies into our everyday that we do. So that's where we are, and expanding, getting more into educational programs, as in education for parents, for the staff, for schools, for families, into how we can make life better.
I love that, Sue. Thank you so much. There's a reason that you are a doctor in your profession is because you are incredible at everything you do. You've not just seen a problem, a real problem, a massive problem, and you've, thought about it, understand it, and researched it, and done your amazing, your amazing work on it. And the way in which I think that focuses on a resolution to a problem rather than it's not clear cut, and it's not a one-off fix, and providing that space where you guys are at to allow for the best outcome and understand the situation rather than try and get a quick fix is incredible. And I think those are the sorts of practices and those are the sorts of needs that we need, starting from the level of a child and in school, and bringing that recognition through what you guys are achieving is amazing. And I honestly, I said it to you before, I think you're incredible, and I think everything that you are doing is just amazing. So I can't wait to see everything that you guys do over the next coming months, years, everything, because it's the need is there. The need is there. So yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Alan. I'm very, very grateful for you having me on your podcast. I've not done one before, so this is pretty exciting and terrifying at the same time. How am I going to respond? So, but it's really
absolutely amazing, because it is podcasts are quite daunting, but I think I'm just so used to it. But I also started doing it too. It's interesting to hear your thoughts on this as well. But because of my ADHD, I can't, like, I have to listen, and I want to speak. I'll forget what I want to say too. I'm like, I'm so passionate, I just want to speak. So it's like doing it and kind of allowed me to improve it. Like, it's like a tool that I've learned helps me improve it with my communication. No, thank you, because you've done amazing about you to be on board with what you're doing. My God, you need to be on board, because that, to be honest though, it's the fundamental understanding of everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if your upbringing, like with me, I had an incredible upbringing, but there's so much about myself that I even need to understand, to even start to understand about myself and learn how our upbringing is important. And whether it's, I'm going to kind of transfer this into what we do, but whether somebody is healing from an injury, I can guarantee there's a big difference when someone's healing with an injury purely based on their experience and their upbringing and their expectations. And so it goes over all different avenues, and you're the fundamental core of that. So that's why, I genuinely mean when I say it's the most, you're making such a massive difference, because if we can have that view and mindset of behavior, it's not good or bad. What does it mean? You can actually improve and make magic out of a situation that's previously been ignored or handled in a way that's actually not only not beneficial but maybe harmful. So
yeah, that's right. It's we live in a civilized society, so we want to just be kind. I think is really, really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Alice. Really, truly appreciate it.